Hey guys, how's everyone doing today? We're on location here at Atlantis Games and Comics, and we'd like to welcome everyone to the first episode of Resilient Connection. I'm here with a couple of YouTubers, and we're going to take a look at a specific topic and try to figure out how that topic ties into everything that we do on our respective channels. In this episode, as a way to thank the hosts for letting us use their place here, we've decided to dedicate this first topic to games, as you can see by all the games we have spread out in front of us here today.
Before we get started, we'd like to introduce John, the general manager here at Atlantis Games and Comics. And he's going to talk to us a little bit about how games have changed over the years. He's our, for lack of a better term, subject matter expert on the whole game realm, as you can see.
I'm John. I'm the manager here at Atlantis Games and Comics Portsmouth location. We are a comic book / gaming store. What that entails is we sell a multitude of card games like Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh, board games like Catan, and a lot of the other ones you see here on the table. Comic books. Comic books are really popular now, as with all the other comic book movies coming out. It's really awesome. Miniatures games like Warhammer 40K and War Machine, as well as role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder. I remember there was a time period when playing advanced level board games and video games was considered almost like not cool, like it was shunned upon, and you're scared to tell everybody at school and stuff whether you did it or not. But it's definitely come a long way since. There's several outlets of proof of how it's came so far, from its simple mainstream things as like the Big Bang Theory TV show and how popular it's become. The Geeks and Sundry website and their tabletop YouTube channel with how they, with Will Wheaton demoing board games and how popular it's become, and the resurgence of sales you've seen. You see, like I brought up the Marvel and superhero movies of how big and explosive they become, and in doing so it's even driven sales of comic books and graphic novels, and you reignited that passion for comic books and comic book heroes and superheroes. It's like a whole other wave of this nerd culture that's not becoming a subculture, it's becoming popular culture, especially board games. And what I would really like to focus on here at Atlantis Games and Comics, we have a tabletop day reserved the third Saturday of every month. Anybody that wants to come up and play some board games or any kind of games, be role-playing games, card games, it doesn't really matter. We make sure we have time set aside for you guys and space set aside for you guys to come out and play, and we're always here to help. We have tons of demo games, and if you have any questions, we'd be more than willing to help you. The demand for board games are really high, and it's really fun and interesting and makes me excited to see that it's not just about the standard popular culture, the standard movies, the standard TV shows. It's becoming good to be a nerd. I'm glad to be a nerd, and we have a place for all of you guys to come and play at any time. Just give us a call. We'll be more than happy to help you guys anytime. And like I said, my name's Jonathan. If you have anything else, give me a call at the store. We also have a website. It's www.atlantis-comics.com, and we can't wait to see you guys then.
All right, well, I'd like to thank John for giving us all that information, a lot of great things and stuff to think about. Listening to what he had to say, admittedly, I know that some of us might have a little bit of a difficult time trying to tie back these games to some of the things that we do. I know for me, personally, I'm into knife making and bushcrafting and outdoor stuff and, crafting of all kinds. You see that on my channel. And I know most of you guys that are subscribed to me are looking and saying, what in the world does what you do have to do with games? And I spent days thinking about it. I spent so much time thinking about it that I actually went online and printed out off of Wikipedia exactly what the definition of a game was. And I thought it was kind of interesting when you look really into what gaming is and what the definition of games are. I mean, it says, and I'm going to read right off of here, it says, plain as day, a game is structured playing, usually undertaken for enjoyment and sometimes used as an educational tool. It goes on, and then says some key components of games are goals, rules, challenge, and interaction. Games generally involve mental or physical situations, and often both. There's one other thing that I wanted to point out, and I know it seems like I did a lot of homework for this, but I really had a hard time tying it back to what I do. One of the other definitions of games, it says, is a game is a system in which players engage in artificial conflict defined by rules that result in quantifiable outcomes. And I sat there and I thought about that, and I started asking myself, what in the world does that have to do with, let's say, affecting fire with a bow drill, or carving a feather stick, or making a knife? And at the end of the day, I stopped and it hit me. Everything that we do, whether we want to admit it or not, whether we like to admit it or not, all the types of interactions that we do at the end of the day, when we go camping, we go on an overnight, we go backpacking, we do fire or purify water or whatever. Anytime we practice any kind of bushcrafting skills, at the end of the day, in 2014, it is, for all intents and purposes, an optional activity. You can go your whole life never having hiked a trail, never having picked up a bushcraft knife, never having grabbed flint and steel or a ferro rod or anything. And a lot of people do. So when you go back and look at it, essentially what we're doing is, in and of itself, a type of game. It's an activity where it's an educational game. We go out there, we're enacting a situation where we intentionally walk past gallons of water that are pure right out of our house. We walk and leave our lighters on the front porch in the kitchen cabinet, and we choose to do things in a more difficult, challenging way. We want to improve our skills, we want to learn. And I think if you really step outside of your box, and I know some people are probably getting furious that I'm saying this, you can look at the bushcrafting activity as a leisurely, educational, learning experience that can be considered somewhat of a game. It's an activity meant to have fun. It's an activity meant to, invoke learning, and you go out there and you want to make a fire with a bow drill and you succeed in it, well, guess what? You've won that day. I know it's a little bit of a stretch, but it is what it is. I don't know. What Chris,
I concur with you on that one, because coming from the prepper angle, games are also meant, and also the military angle, I should say, games are meant to be a form of team building as well as education. For example, when I was active duty Navy, we had what they call DC Olympics, Damage Control Olympics, where we would pit one repair locker against another repair locker to see who could plug the fastest and most effective, who could put out a fire the fastest. Not only did that teach you speed and exactness on how to do this, but it also taught you team building, because that was your team. And you formed a bond with them. And with that being said, carrying it over to the prepping community, I look at it where we are getting more and more blackouts for whatever reason. And I hate to use the term, but bug out. Well, we live in Hampton Roads here. We can actually have a forced evacuation because we're in a hurricane zone. That's a form of a bug out. That being said, in my kit, I always like having like small little pocket games, things of that nature, because once again, when you're sitting there at a hotel, or if you're there with your family, once again at a hotel or a shelter or something, it's going to be boring. But if you have card games, hence these, once again, you could keep the kids occupied, you keep the family occupied, you keep your mind stimulated and off the immediate problem of, I'm sitting here completely helpless at the mercy of the storm.
Healthy distractions.
Right.
Yep.
So, and that's where I look at them, where they're important. Because if you give up mentally, the battle's lost.
Yeah, that's true.
Matt, how about you?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense to me. Coming from the technical aspect, I probably have the most to talk about here. Games are in almost every aspect of tech, whether it be you're a tech support representative, whether you're doing computer repairs. Looking at the technical support side, that is a very stressful job. And I remember back in the day when Gateway was in our area, you would actually work for about 2 or 3 hours, and then it was mandatory for you to take a break, and they actually had a room over to the side where they had computers set up just for video gaming. They even had a table in there with about 10 or 20 different types of board games you could play. Pretty much almost any kind of game you could think of was in that room. And that's just for technical support representatives. Now,
For like stress release?
yeah, you would have to have it, because if you didn't have any stress release, that job would give you an emotional breakdown. And then going to my side, which is more of the hardware repair end, when you think about either whether it be desktops, tablets, laptops, sure, they're always going to be used for office tasks, Word, PowerPoint, to get your job done. But let's face it, at the end of the day, when you go home, what are you most likely going to do with your computer? You're going to play some sort of game. It's going to be most likely a video game. Nowadays, the internet games are very popular. Yahoo has hundreds and hundreds of built-in games.
Facebook games.
Yeah, Facebook. I mean, look at all the major social media sites. And for me personally, I'm more into the vintage games. I have several computers set up at home. One of them is running Windows 2000. The other is actually running a version of DOS, version 6.22. And because even back in the day, there were hundreds, probably thousands of games you could play. And at the end of a stressful day, for me, that's a release.
It's awesome. So basically, from what I'm hearing, okay, you've got stress relief, you've got just, the whole tech side of things where everything is kind of, I mean, let's face it, tech games, I think, drove technology to where they were, because
Absolutely.
all the graphics cards and everything that you use in today's computers were all driven based on the fact that someone wanted to sit down and play this game digitally, and the old DOS didn't do it, and that's what helped it evolve. And then from your side of the house, handheld PlayStation or card game or board game, I mean, that's critical in keeping your head clear. Like you said, if you lose your mind, you lose the battle.
Absolutely.
So, I don't know. That's
And also it's a way to meet new friends, because once again, if you're in like a shelter somewhere and there's 100 of you there, you got a bunch of screaming kids.
Yeah.
You got families that are basically, for all practical purposes, displaced. So if you break out one of these games, like, give you an example, you have Werewolf.
Yeah.
Werewolf is designed for 8 to 20 people. Well, that would be perfect, because it's for kids, it's for adults, and if you can get 20 people, and let's face it, everybody's hanging out bored, you can actually get them together, put them in a circle, and then play a game.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It keeps you sane. It distracts from the fact of the situation that you're in. And it lets you just have a release for an hour or two. And that there will keep you sane in even the most horrific situations.
So it's even from my perspective, from a learning experience. Again, we may not necessarily be bringing one of these games out in the field with us, but essentially what we're doing is out there learning and playing the games. It's a way of training your mind. So I mean, we've got
Or the competitions where I forget which organization does it, but they do everything flintlock.
Oh, the reenacting?
Yeah, the reenacting.
That's purely entertainment right there. So I mean, that could be that as a form of game. So I think, we got a connection. We got that. We've got that connection where we can take games, the concept of games, board games, all types of games, and it's tied into what we do for prepping, what we do for outdoors and bushcrafting, and then technology. That I think
Absolutely.
I think we hit it.
Yeah, we did.
Awesome.
Well, I hope you guys found this both entertaining and informative. Now, like I said before, we want to keep everything pretty lighthearted for our first video. And we also want to thank our hosts at Atlantic Comics and Games. We promise to be centered more around the things that they're used to seeing from us in the future. So be sure to subscribe to our channels and be ready for our next episode where we'll be bringing in the topic of fire.
Fire.
So everyone, be well.
Stay focused.
And most of all,
Stay
Stay connected.